Hey everyone, Simon here. I hope you're well and you're having a good day. It's a Steam Games Festival going on at the moment through to the 9th of February, and there's hundreds of game demos from the indie community largely for you to download and play and get stuck in with. For 2021, I really wanted to be able to go out and video capture some kind of convention or festival around indie games, and because of COVID that's not going to happen. I don't see any festivals happening this year and it will all be online. I still have COVID myself, so apologies if I'm kind of breathing mid-sentence. This will be heavily edited after I'm off the screen so that it will be less annoying, I promise, because it's annoying me 6 weeks on, and thank you for your well wishes in the meantime. So what I've done is I've got access to 50 demos of 50 games that I had on my Steam wishlist that I'm super interested in. Some of these demos are from the Steam Games Festival. A couple of them I'd actually been given privy to before Steam Games Festival because of the stuff that I do kind of behind the scenes with this channel. So thank you to the developers for all of that. I'll be spending about 2 minutes each game kind of explaining how it works, how it made me feel, how it felt to play, and whether or not it's still going to be a day one purchase for me, a staying on my wish list but might be like a light discount before I buy, a heavy discount before I buy, or I'm no longer interested and it will come off my Steam wish list. That doesn't always necessarily mean that it's a bad game, it just means it's not for me, and I'll kind of explain why it's not for me as part of that kind of spiel. So, without further ado, this is my grand let's go to a convention of gaming 2021 style. I hope it's informative, I hope you enjoy. If you've got any other recommendations that you think people might like, please stick them down in the comments below, and I'm going to go and get myself a great big glass of water and let's get recording. Bye! So we're kicking off with Rhythm Action that will all be demonetised, I'm sure. This is Tortua Global Rhythm. It's a 3-track demo that's out there at the moment, and Global is in the title and it's in the heart of the soundtrack, and that's what really drew me into Tortua. Each song seems to borrow from a different culture around the world, and songs are based around that. And so are the charts, they feel really rhythmic as you go through the stages. Each song has 3 different difficulties, and that's a 4-button, a 6-button and an 8-button version, and you use the keyboards to do it. I couldn't get on with the 8-button version, but then I never have done. I always struggle with, say, DJ Max on the 8-button modes and everything else that's kind of gone down that route. But on the 4 and the 6, it felt fluid, it felt really in time with the rhythm and the keeping of the music. And I love the fact that as the turtles come down on the screen and then change into dragons for the hold, you can see how the outline of where you need to kind of hit and let go changes as it goes through. I struggled a little bit with the power-ups because the tutorial says that you need to click on them with a mouse to kind of do it, and I was like, I've already used my fingers, but apparently you can use keyboard shortcuts to do that as well. So yeah, out of all the rhythm games that are coming in 2021, this is the one that I'm most looking forward to at the moment, and so it is an instant day one purchase for me on my Steam wish list. So that's Tortua Global Rhythm, coming soon. The next game we're going to talk about is Kovox Pitch. Another rhythm action game, but this one's a 2-laned rhythm action game, which I initially thought would be something like Muse Dash, but it runs completely differently. You play as this baseball pitcher, and balls are coming towards you on 2 different rows, and you need to flip between them, but it changes the view of the balls as you go. You then also have to switch between 2 different types of balls. So you've got red ones that require 1 button, and then blue ones that require another on the keyboard. And then you can either press and hold, and then there's a button mashy one as well. The thing that kind of got me a little bit confused with Kovox Pitch is that as you switch between views, where the ball is in relation to your target area that you need to hit changes, and it took me a while to get to grips with that. The other thing that kind of didn't gel with me nearly as much with Kovacs Pitch is the soundtrack is really strange. It kind of takes on this lo-fi beats to chill to, but actually it's not lo-fi chill beats. It's a really distant rock soundtrack, and whilst the charts of the balls coming towards you kind of do match up with what's going on in the background, it doesn't really gel, or at least it didn't for me. The actual mechanics of the game were interesting. It was more complicated than I thought it was going to be going in, but that's not necessarily a slight on the game. For me, this is probably not going to be a day one buy, but I am going to be keeping it on my wish list for probably a sale at a later point, and I'll keep my eye on it, and hopefully it will be more refined in the future. Moving across into minimal puzzle games now, and we've got the absolutely superb Cadence up next. Cadence is a musical loop style machine puzzler, and as you look at each level, every block has some kind of tone or rhythm to it, and different blocks require different things to basically sound out their noise for you to then get to the end of the level and kind of complete the chain. Some of them will require just an arrow being dragged towards them to kind of hit out the noise. Some of them will need a couple of arrows hitting them at the same time. And then you've got things that will have like delayed echoes to them and stuff like that. And the idea of Cadence is that you kind of listen to the sound, to the level, watch how the loops unfold, and work out how to unlock like the gateway, which might need to have like 3 or 4 hits before it can open up and get you to that final gate. It's really cleverly put together. It's got like zero UI to it, so you have to fiddle around for the first level or so to kind of think, oh, that's how it works. But once it clicked with me, I was off and away, and I had a really good time playing Cadence. I've had this on my wish list for absolutely ages by a pure accident, going through like the Steam's coming soon pages for like a year ahead, and I can't wait for this one to come out. It's going to be a day one purchase for me. This is right up both my musical and puzzle alley, because it's through trial and error as well as like methodical working out that you can get to the end of each level. There's no kind of stupidity, random generation involved. So yeah, Cadence, super excited for it. The other minimalist puzzle game that I have on this list is Traversal or Triversal. And this is all about trying to maneuver a blob on the screen by using 3 like ropes to trapeze yourself into the right position. It's an interesting concept because each level gives you a certain amount of goes for you to try and hit in the middle, but it incentivizes you to go around the houses using up your moves to collect coins, because coins then give you extra hints or extra moves as like the endless mode, which is what this demo had on, gets harder and harder and more difficult as you go on. So when you hit like level 12 of you trying to like burrow down on it deep, no longer are all of the anchor points stationary. They start to kind of move towards you, and it's like you're moving across like a gooey spider's web, because you might hit something that's movable and it will pull you slightly away from where you want to be. So yeah, deceptively tricky, really interesting. I'm quite keen to see what they do with the campaign mode and the way how that works, because Endless was a really good learning curve and learning tool for me to really get into Triversal. And yeah, 2 thumbs up from me. I'm not sure if I'd probably get it on launch if it's got a launch discount. Otherwise, it would be a soft discount for me, only because cadence really clicked with me, and so I was judging the other kind of big puzzle game up against that. Onto the driving games now, and we're kicking off with the amazing You Suck at Parking. And I did after the first couple of levels, which went relatively straightforward. This game handles like a dream, and it's really Moorish, and I've enjoyed the way how it kind of built up its difficulty and got more and more stupid as it went along. It handles like an old school Micro Machines and Circuit Breakers game. I'm going back to like PS1 Mega Drive era because I'm old. But the cars stick to the ground and have grip, and they turn really tightly, which I adore in anything that's like arcadey, cutesy, racery type thing. Now the idea of this is that you have to kind of maneuver your cars and do multiple cars, 3 or 4, within a time limit to get each one into a parking area. And if you don't do them all within the time limit, it's game over. Cars also have limited fuel as well, so you can't like faff around to try and get it all lined up perfectly. You have to get into the swing of manoeuvring in. I loved it when it started to get even more stupid with magnets and explosives and mines and AI cars kind of flying out of tents to try and put you off. This looks like it's going to be an absolutely crazy cat game, and I'm super looking forward to it. This is going to be another day one purchase for me. I can already tell 2021 my wallet will be crying, but this was possibly the most quote-unquote fun I've had in all of the 50 games that are on this list. So if that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does. Next up is Wreck Out, and this is a vehicular combat kind of football hybrid. And apologies for the footage. It's a multiplayer demo, and it was just me on my own, so all I could do was go up against the AI tutorial, and then the AI bots didn't carry forward into the actual versus or online multiplayer lobbies that you could have. Wreck Out is an interesting mix of tackling each other with your vehicles to try and capture the ball, and then you'd have to spin around, and with that velocity the ball would kind of swing round behind you, and then as it's charged you could then fire it and break goals in like Tetris blocks on the edges of the screen. That then goes towards your score, and you kind of continue to try and tackle and get the ball back and swing it off again. I found the swinging mechanic, which is the whole crux of this game, actually quite difficult to get to grips with, and it's because you have to be precise in and not like under fire from having the tackle to go around and kind of fling off, but also you've got very specific precision of when you let go of your button or tap it, and otherwise it will fly off in a completely different direction and not score you any points whatsoever. Which is what I found throughout most of my challenge attempts in the single player mode. I think this could be a really good 2 or 4 player local or online multiplayer hidden gem, but it is very difficult to judge that based on single player tutorial stuff. So it's staying on my wish list. I am interested. It won't be a day one purchase for me though, until I've experienced or been able to experience a proper full match with AI bots and or other people. Next up is Crazy Wheels, which reminded me so heavily of Super Toy Cars 2 that I had like deja vu and symptoms of PTSD with it. It has exactly the same problems as to why I don't like Super Toy Cars 2 as I do not like Crazy Wheels either. The tracks are built for you to have precision to drive around them, but the cars are too fast and too unresponsive but over responsive at the same time with their driving. It kind of, when you press accelerate, the car massively oversteers, and then once you're up to high speed it can't turn for a dime. So you go from being like a nimble gazelle to just a fat hippopotamus, and then like there's no middle ground, but the tracks are designed for you to be precise, and so it turns into, for me personally, a really frustrating and unfulfilling, it doesn't scratch any itch for me of anything of Micro Machines or Mashed or all of those other kind of classic style of games that this is trying to emulate. It also had by far the most amount of bugs out of any of these 50 games on the list. I disappeared from the track, I fell through the track, I picked up power-ups that crashed the game, I drove through power-ups instead of picking them up when I didn't have a power-up on me. It was really, really poor experience. This is an example of perhaps of maybe putting out a demo when the game wasn't ready for it, and as a result it's put me off. And this is one of the few games on this list that I'm going to be taking off my wish list, because now I know that it's really like Super Toy Cars 2. I know it's not going to be for me personally. If you enjoy that kind of wrestling around a car in the cutesy environment, keep an eye on it, because it looks like it's going to fulfill and pull through on that. But use Super Toy Cars 1 and 2 for kind of a reference as to whether you like that style or not. From one extreme to the other, Race Condition is the soapiest game that I drove out of all of the ones on this 50 list. I really enjoyed my time with Race Condition, but it's not without its taste problems potentially, in that your car and all of the AI cars and everything, it's like you're driving on the moon, and everything's got zero gravity or low gravity. And low grip, because each corner that you take, you just kind of float through it. As you cross the line, everyone turns around and like cartwheels over in like a crazy stuntman way. It's got charm, and I love the aesthetic. We've had quite a few of these low poly styled racing games recently, and I'm not bored of it yet, and this one has a particular style to it that I really enjoyed. The tracks are quite nice. I did have a couple of niggles though, and the first one is with the camera. It's either too low or too high, and not really anything in between. And also there's a track, it gives you 3 tracks to race on in the demo, and the track where it's raining, the whole game is too grey, and so you've got grey sky and grey tarmac, and it just felt a little bit too dark for me personally. But there is definitely something here, and it is going to be, at the moment I'd probably put it in a, if it's got like a 10% or 15% discount on launch, I would get it on launch. I'd like to see exactly how much content there is in the full game before I put down my money, having been burnt on a couple of low poly games recently that have got all aesthetic but not as much content, and I hope Race Condition doesn't go down that route. Next up is by far the most confused racing game, 22 Racing Series. Now this bills itself as a RTS racer, and it's like a cross between Wipeout and F-Zero, but it's sector-based running as well as race-based running. And the idea with this is that you have to follow certain sectors of the track that are coloured in certain ways to build up energy and plasma to either launch boosts or do like an ultimate boost. Or when you claim sectors, it allows you to level up parts of your car as you go along. Now this whole dynamic is absolutely fascinating, and I'm quite sure I didn't get the hang of it. But I really enjoyed my time when I was racing inside the tubes in the time trials. It was really, really full on, and like the technical speed of it all was superb, and I could understand how the levelling up system worked. The game absolutely fell down for me when I then had to race outside the tube on the outside. The gravity constantly shifts all the way, because obviously you're just like flying around the gravity loop, and I just couldn't get to grips with it at all. It's probably more me than anything else, but it just didn't click. And no matter how many times I went back to the tutorial, and then I started watching the devs play online just to kind of see what I was doing wrong, and I'm still none the wiser. So if there's a bit more in depth about actually how does the gravity work and so on and so forth when you're racing up against competent AI, I think there's a really good game here, but I'm clearly missing something and I haven't had the time to really dive into it. So it's staying on my wish list. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it, and there's some technical wizardry and some really good ideas here. I just need to dig deeper, and hopefully this will pique the interest of the rest of you to kind of have a nose. Also in my confused pile is Metric Racer, which I admittedly didn't spend too long with because it made me feel really unwell. And it's down to a couple of things. Like I said earlier on with Crazy Wheels, if you're going to make really tight and twisty and complex tracks for you to race on in this gorgeous looking and highly customizable Wipeout styled game, and when I was looking through the menus I was like, cool, this looks like this is going to be amazing. When I got into the game, it's so fast that you can't see what's coming up ahead of you, and you can't react to it, and you can't steer around most of it. And so all you do is smash from wall to wall, and it gives this kind of shaky vibration, cracked screen effect that just gave me a headache within literally 3 to 4 minutes of playing the game. The issue that you'd normally say is, well, fine, you just slow down then. But if you do, the AI are just storming around the track quite happily, firing weapons at each other and being perfectly capable. But you as a player can't. And so again, it could be that I'm just clearly missing something that I'd not picked up in the tutorial or on the live streams, but this left a really poor impression on me. It also crashed a couple of times as well to desktop, so apologies for the kind of tiny pieces of footage. It kept wiping the footage as I went through. But yeah, I'm going to keep this on my wish list for now, but it's left a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be that interested in it until I can see like a fully fledged form, and maybe if there's like a lower class of spaceship to play with that's actually capable of going around the courses. Completely switching gears now to a game called Tip Top. And Tip Top is a roguelike rock climbing game where you play as this lady who you need to move her arms with your analog sticks and then cling on to rock faces and edges with your trigger buttons. She's got very low stamina because she's clinging on for dear life, and so you have to constantly move quickly, and she kind of gets into all kind of awkward, weird spaghetti Eddie kind of positions, which will then make her lose more stamina, and then she'll fall off and die. The game is purposely a little bit tricky, but it is precise, and I appreciated that. Even if it takes a little while to get used to, and it's designed to be frustrating and difficult because you need to then kind of be quick and plan, but you'll be quite quickly put into like an awkward or wrong position that's very difficult to come back from, because you'll have to kind of reverse yourself back down a mountain to then try up another route. I found the jumping to be quite tricky to get used to, when you could hang on to a thing and kind of like leapfrog up and try and jump onto something else. And when it started to introduce like rock hooks and things like that, I found that sometimes there was a little bit of a collision detection issue where I thought I'd reached something and the game had decided I hadn't, and so she would just fall to her death. I found it a really unique and interesting experience. I'm not sure if I'm entirely sold on it, but it's definitely staying on my wish list, and hats off to the developers for thinking of a new way to try something unique out in gaming, which I will always applaud and take a look at. Sticking with the extreme sports vibe, Meow Pow, probably my favourite name of the lot. And this is a 2, 3 or 4 player game. You can play it as single player against AI, and you'll see a bit of that here. But the idea with Meow Pow is that you have to tackle and take control of the ball. And when you do, your opposite team's goal then opens, and then you have to kind of run it or smash it so that it can get into the goal. I found this game really, really tricky against the AI. I didn't play against actual humans because no one else was about, but the AI are really aggressive, and so I couldn't actually get a single goal line, I think, during my entire time playing the game. I have to admit, I was terrible. But I did have really good fun playing it. It's a simple, watered down, cutesy cat version of football / Rocket League. Or actually, there's a game on PS4 that I adore called Video Ball, that this is just an identical match of, but with cats. And so, yeah, I'm happy for more of the same. If you've not come across these games yet, you do well to pick them up. Meow Pow, very good. And I think would be a good giggle for 2 or 4 players playing together. In a similar party silly vibe, Dino Galaxy Tennis rocked my vibe a little bit more than Meow Pow did. It's for 1, 2, 3 or 4 players, and you go into teams of dinosaurs basically doing tennis to try and get past the other dinosaurs and smash into the planet. And you can see it's got like a beat 'em up style stuff at the top, so each time the ball smashes into Earth, it will then cost like a health point up above. You've got 4 different types of shots, although I didn't notice that until halfway through the game. But the way how it works was quite cool, because you can dash around with the dinosaur, but you've only got limited dash abilities, and you might need to save up some of that energy to do some of your power and trick shots. The fact that you can work in teams of 2, but you can't quite cover all of your planet, means that you have to kind of communicate or rely on the other person actually doing a decent enough job. But I found this one surprisingly quite moreish and enjoyable. I think it'd be one of those that you play for like 15-20 minutes and then put down and move on to something else, but it could be something that stays in your multiplayer repertoire for quite a long time to come. I was quite enamoured with it, and it will be definitely high up on my wish list, probably to buy if there's a slight discount on launch. Next up in the crazy party games is Unicorns on Unicycles, and I'm sad to say I had Balance Lot vibes coming from this after playing it for only a few minutes. Because I'd got bored and annoyed with it. The unicorns, basically you move backwards and forwards, and they kind of like tilt backwards, and if you land on your bum then it's game over. If you roll off the map it's game over. But the idea is that you're supposed to go backwards and then charge forwards and stab the other unicorn with your horn to win a point. But the issue is that the controls for you going backwards and forwards are really all over the place and not very responsive or easy to understand. And so sometimes I would do the same thing multiple times and get very different results depending on what I pressed. And so I found the whole experience to be quite frustrating and confusing, and therefore not very engrossing or engaging. And despite some great theming, some great graphics and some great music, the actual gameplay, distilled down to 2 buttons, is so shallow that I can't really recommend it for anything more than a couple of minutes stupidity before you move on to something that you'd want to play better. Unicorns on Unicycles is coming off my wish list. However, if it comes out and it's at like 50p, I would probably pick it up. moving genre now into platformers, and I'm kicking off with Ambriel Dreams. And I'm going to say it now, this is probably the most pleasantly surprising experience out of the 50 games on this list. It's playable for 1 to 4 players, and it's a 2D momentum and physics-based ball traversal game. And I just was blown away with it. I love the aesthetic, I love the art style and the way how the music kind of evolves and creates this kind of magical mystery feel to it. But the way how it works and the way how it plays is absolutely spot on for a physics-based platformer. It's all around momentum and speed, and because you can't jump, you're literally just rolling left and right. It's all around, can I make that jump? Can I land on a bounce pad in the right way whilst I've got that speed to get over something? It's also around knock-on effects as well, because sometimes and quite often you'll be chaining stuff up, and it just has such a poetic fluidity to it that I was entranced. The demo is also quite chunky as well, which made me quite excited for where the game is to go, because it's not afraid in giving out quite a lot of content in its demo for you to really explore, from very simple levels through to maddening ones. It also comes with a level editor, and it had some community style like made levels up for you to kind of have a look at. And yeah, that makes me super excited to see what Ambriel Dreams can bring in the future. Easily one of the best surprises on this list, and this is a day one buy for me. Continuing on with games that I'm definitely buying on release is Fling to the Finish. I adored this demo, it is so fun. It reminds me heavily of a game from PlayStation 2 era called Whiplash, and you played as a rabbit with like a ball chain, and you had to kind of like maneuver both around. This works the same kind of way in that you control 2 characters with one on each analog stick, but they're sticky. And so you can fling one at a wall and stick it, and then with the string that's between them, you kind of can pull the other one back and fling it upwards and forwards. Now you can do this in single player, or you can share, and you can play in multiplayer in races against each other in like split screen multiplayer as well as co-op as well. So all of the different options are covered, and it plays so well. It's got that. For me, my favourite era of gaming is the PS2 era, because it was when gaming could be innocent and stupid and funny and cartoonish, but still well put together. And this absolutely ticks every single box. And the levels were tricky, but without being stupid as well. And as you made more mistakes, it would take you longer and you'd get less time getting through, but it would kind of clear the way for you to make it slightly easier so you could get home. It also borrows a lot from the pinball world, which I really liked, because as you kind of roll around like balls trying to like get everywhere as characters, you're bouncing off everything like crazy. So yeah, another fantastic game that I didn't know about until the Steam Games Festival, and now it's going to be day one for me, absolutely. Third game in a row that I'm probably going to buy on day one is Hikey. And hats off to whoever put together this demo, because it was one of the best presented demos actually on the Steam Games Festival, because they curated levels across the whole game so that you got to experience across multiple stages of the game how the game gets harder and harder as it progresses. The best way to describe Hikey would be Super Meat Boy meets Runbow. Because it's got that precision-based platforming, and it has it down to a T, and everything feels right and runs correctly and just flows nicely. It has weight to it, your character. But you have 3 colours that you're moving between, and you do that with the shoulder buttons. And what that means is that 2 colours at any one time are visible, and whatever is in your way or creating platforms for those two colours work, but the third colour disappears, and so you'll be jumping and switching colours or rotating stuff around to try and get round stuff. And what I liked about the demo and what makes me really excited around the game is that it doesn't just stop at this is a platformer where you need to switch the colours to kind of switch up the platforms. It had lasers going everywhere where you needed to switch and really think about not only am I using it as a platformer for me, but I'm using it as a block tool against enemies and lasers and like lethal things. So super impressed, handles like a dream. High Key is going to be the next one that I'm going to pretty much buy on release. Next up in the 2D platforming and puzzle space is Unbound Worlds Apart, and this game looks and sounds gorgeous. There's some really beautiful artwork here, not just in the levels but in the cutscenes that were in between as well. I really like the way how the puzzles were put together in Unbound, although I got stuck in the demo, which is never a good sign for me. But the way how it worked is that you basically open up and warp like a before and after different times and different time periods of the same world, so that you kind of open doors that weren't there before or create bridges that have now collapsed. It also turned enemies into stone, and then as soon as you stop the warp, it then turns it back to an enemy, so you need to make sure that you're nowhere near the enemy when you do that. What really intrigued me the most, though, is that Unbound showed during its demo that it's not a one-trick pony and that's all that it had to offer. It was finding unique and interesting ways to use this kind of circular vision to do different things, and that's what really kind of made me go, okay, you have the potential to be a cut above and in the top echelon of this 2D puzzle platformer kind of like stage manipulation style of a game. So yeah, super intrigued. I'm not sure if it's going to be a day one for me, but it will be a day one if there's like a 10 or 15% discount for definite. So yeah, Unbound, thumbs up from me. Switching gears from 2D to 3D now, with our platforming, we've got Tasamachi Behind the Twilight. The game's not in English, but it didn't hamper any of my enjoyment whatsoever. The game is all about traversal and the verticality of it, I would say, as well. The game's demo is in two very distinct sections. The first one reminded me very much of Final Fantasy X's Trials, when you'd go to the different temples and take part in those, because they were like moving platforms and jumping around. And I swear this girl's got an auto jump in this game, or it felt like it at least anyway. But it was very simple and glidey and floaty and easy to get around. And as she fell in the water, she just reappeared at the beginning of the room, and it was like low maintenance is what I would say. The second part of the game then put you into this beautiful village, and I really liked the art style and the music for this game as well. And there's just like collectibles everywhere, and the demo kind of times out when you hit a certain amount of collectibles. So my advice to you is don't do what I do and collect all of the collectibles. Just rummage around the place. You'll get to spend longer in the demo and enjoy the environment and the music and the way how it all kind of comes together. Really impressed that literally everything in this game you could climb on or like bounce pad up. The whole thing is floaty as hell, but it's got a kind of weird charm to it that is making me more impressed after playing it than what I was thinking about it going in. So yeah, Tasamachi, quietly pleasantly surprised. That will probably be a minor discount before I buy, to be honest, but that's better than what I thought it was going to be. Sticking with the 3D adventures, but going a little bit more survivally, Hazel Sky really intrigued me, and its demo left me wanting for more, but mainly because it seemed so small. The game sees you play as this kid who has like a really terrible family. They just dump everyone on an island so that they can become an engineer. And like he like comes across his dead relatives, and he's like, "I won't be like you, cousin." No, you won't. He's dead. But the demo itself takes place in the initial kind of lighthouse that you start off in. Some of the platforming reminds me of Angel of Darkness Tomb Raider, which I probably think it won't endear itself to many people, and it does need to be a little bit more fluid where it can be. But it's got some great ideas, and I really liked the way how you could pick things up and put it in your inventory and kind of rotate around and have a look. I like the fact that you could jam out on the guitar. And the puzzles seem to kind of solve themselves, and the fact that you would pick up certain things and you'd have to kind of carry them around, and you weren't able to do anything else until you dropped it in the right place. So it wasn't like you had an infinite backpack where you could just chuck key items everywhere, and I think that will probably play quite a larger role in the actual game itself. But yeah, I liked what I saw from Hazel Sky. If it can be a little bit more fluid around some of its platforming elements, that would be great. Mainly because I was bumping into things, falling down stairs, and generally injuring myself. Overcooked isn't its own genre, but the couch co-op Carnage that it provides and has become like a template for success is what I'm trying to say, and that's what Healing Spree does. It takes that Overcooked, moving out, tools out vibe, and then puts it into a medical environment. You play as doctors who have patients delivered by being thrown out the back of an ambulance. You then run out, stick them in a wheelchair, throw them literally into their bed, diagnose them, make the ingredients for the medicine, make the medicine, and then administer it, hopefully all before they die. If they do die, you've got body bags at the ready, and if you want to revive them, if within a certain time period, you can do so with a defibrillator, so all your kind of access points are covered. The game absolutely works with this Overcooked vibe in a medical environment. You can throw ingredients and different tools around, and you can do it through windows, smashing them. There's a nurse on reception that you can abuse with the various different objects that you can pick up and throw around. It just really works. It's got that stupid, quirky humour down to a T, and yeah, thoroughly good game. As you can see, I was playing it in single player mode, and it lets you use 2 doctors and switch between the 2. What I found though is that you need to be pressing down on a instruction for it to carry through. So it didn't really feel like a single player experience is really catered for properly here in its current guise. So hopefully that's improved in the future. But if you've got a mate, or if you've got 3 mates and you can get on with this, I think this will be an absolute steal and a good laugh to have. So this is going to be a must buy on launch. Moving across to shooter arcade games now, and we've got AK Zlotl first up, and this is a twin stick shooter but with cutesy animals. Who wants rabbits with guns? This is wave based, and apologies for the footage because it's not compatible with a gamepad yet. So it's WASD and the mouse control, and then clicking one for like left click for like shooting, right click for picking up other people's weapons. Because when you kill the rabbit, they'll drop their machine gun, and then you can pick it up and use it against the next lot. There's a couple of really good things that I liked about this. Quite like the pixel art style, and I like the fact that it's cutesy animals with guns. I did like the fact that it shows you where everything's going to appear so that you can kind of get into position and try and mow people down. The difficulty ramps up quite quickly though, so it's going to be one of those like high score leaderboard challenge games more than it being like an in-depth and engrossing twin stick shooter. So if you're worried about longevity, this game probably isn't going to be one for you, because on the splash screen at the end it said that there's like 16 weapons, about 25 different enemies, and it's all about trying to survive as long as possible. So I feel like this game is probably going to show an awful lot of what it has to offer quite early on, and then it's about the skill of survival for you to keep going. It does need gamepad controls in the future though, so staying on my wish list. It's probably going to be a sale, if I'm perfectly honest, for me to pick it up. But yeah, not so bad. A game that did blow me away though was Carnage, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name. But this is just a shoot 'em up, but it has one really cool mechanic which isn't new, but it's a new way of doing it. And it's about having two very different weapons. One is for 2D enemies and one's for 3D enemies. And I love the twist. I just loved it. It's not a new twist because we've seen it where you have to like switch colours or polarities. Like some of the cave games done this, didn't they? Where you'd have to flip between different things to shoot different enemies. But this does it in such a visual way, especially when the same enemy switches from like 2D Space Invaders to like a 3D version. I was really charmed with it. Adding to that plenty of other like arcade, like wink wink, nudge nudge references throughout, and it is clearly a love letter to the 80s and the 90s of shoot 'em ups, arcade games, and just classic references throughout. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It plays like a dream. It's also one of those games that it's not entire bullet hell. You just have to try and be methodical and understand your own limits, because whilst all of your weapons power up really well, you're not going to clear the board all the time. So if you go in with that open mind, Carnage, really superb, and probably my favourite arcade game of the lot on this list. In a more mind-bending way, we have Curved Space, which is all about playing a twin-stick shooter but in a third-person perspective. And the gravity is the floor that you're currently on, rather than it actually being a constant. So all of the levels are designed to be almost like hypnotic imagery, or like those weird illusions of like impossible bends. So as you kind of tilt over the edge of something, you'll stick to it and like rotate over, and the camera will follow you. Now, in the options, there's a ton of different things that you can select on or off to try and make it less queasy and dizzy inducing for you. I'm someone that gets motion sickness in cars, and I'm a bit of a wimp with those kind of things. So I had to turn all of these options on because it was making me feel a little bit like but that didn't take away from the fact that the core game mechanics of Curved Space feel great. The way how the ship manoeuvres is great. The different array of weapons is vast. The way how the game has these kind of like charged up pure enemies that are full of energy that you can then kill and then suck up and then go into like an overdrive and really power stuff up. Some weapons can be pressed and held to charge and be much better as well. So there's an awful lot going on with Curved Space. I think a lot of it will come down to whether you want the Marmite level design. Some people I think will absolutely love it. Some people will be really put off by it. I came to this game because I was really intrigued with the level design. It gets better the more vaster the levels become. Some of the early stuff in this demo is really like you're going around a donut, and it introduces you to the idea, but it doesn't really fully explore it in a way that makes you go, I appreciate it. And as the levels get bigger, I appreciated the level design and the way how gravity works much more. So it's going to be a grower, not a shower, I think, Curved Space. So as a result, absolutely stays on my wish list, but I don't think it will be a day one for me unless there's a chunky discount, or perhaps on more of a sale later on. The final one in this selection is Godstrike. And those of you that have played Fury will kind of know what Godstrike will be about, because it's a 1 versus 1 twin stick shooter arena combat game. But I found this one really nicely put together and with some really interesting game mechanics that I'm going to kind of discuss. Godstrike turns time limit into health, but it also means that every ability that you take into the arena with you takes away time and therefore health from your character. So you'll be constantly weighing up how many of the 4 abilities am I going to take in, and how much time is that going to take away from me, because now I have to kill him quicker. But also it means that I'll get less hit points, because whenever you get hit by any of his bullets, and my god, he doesn't spew out quite a lot, especially in his first phase in this demo, it takes away some of your time, which is also your health. And when you reach 0 seconds left, you're a 1-hit death character. And because he is attacking you 360 degrees from all angles, you will get hit. And you will get hit often. So it's that dichotomy of what do I take in versus how much health do I have. And I found that really fascinating and well judged and implemented. As a demo, it's quite tricky to kind of assess a whole game based on just one boss battle fight. But I did thoroughly enjoy my time with it. I like the fact that the boss has various different phases. It was not a pushover in any way, shape or form, as you'll see from the footage of me getting absolutely mauled. And I did really enjoy myself. I don't think that this would be a day one purchase for me, because it's not normally the type of twin stick shooter that I go for. I'm much more of a Geometry Wars style twin stick shooter, but I really did enjoy it. And so it's sticking high up on my wish list. And will probably be, if it's got a launch discount on, I might go for it, but if not, it will be kind of a light sale for me. Moving on to some tower defense games now. I've got 2 to show you from one of my favourite genres, bizarrely, and it's Defense that I'm kicking off with. This is a hexagonal grid-based tower defense game that is one of those ones where you have to build the turrets around to make a maze to keep the enemies from getting to you quickly. You have to kind of make the longest route possible in the environment that you've got. The other kind of really interesting thing around this game is that you're defending 9 energy cores, and those cores basically become your currency. And up in the top left hand corner screen, you'll see like whenever it kind of reaches a new kind of ding, you can then lay down potentially a new turret or something like a wall. But the more you put down, it's sapping away from your energy center. And so as you put down more guns, your upgrades get slower and slower, which means you have to be more methodical and strategic around where you select stuff. And maybe you might want to have less things going up, or you might want to sell stuff back so that you can get energy and then kind of upgrade towers elsewhere or something like that. Really well put together. It also follows the method of one of my favourite tower defence games of all time, the Defence Grid games, where it will kind of pick up stuff and kind of run it towards an end. And so you can kind of shoot stuff on their way back and kind of return your energy crystals back to their home. And that's kind of how you're judged as to whether you succeeded or failed. really interesting, quite keen to see how it develops over time, but a really nice polished experience that seemed quite well balanced actually for playing on medium difficulty. I didn't dare go for hard. Perhaps slightly less balanced but no less intriguing is Sons of Ra, which is a 1 versus 1 competitive tower and lane defence battle game. You pick your ancient Egyptian god, and they each have different towers to place and gifts from gods to wage war on. And then you send your foot soldiers down the different lanes and build up towers based on the energy that you get from killing enemies and just growing over time. I found that games would either be over in a matter of seconds or they would go on for quite some time, and that's because where you've got multiple lanes of attack, if you are exposed at any one time, or if someone sends like a spam of like 10 or 12 henchmen all at once, it doesn't matter how many, if you don't have the mana for henchmen to kind of fight back as well as anything else to back it up, you get overrun and you lose immediately. And that's because the health meter is about how many enemies make it to your home, not necessarily what their health is or what damage that they can do. And I found that a little bit irksome. The other thing that used to confuse me with this game, or did confuse me with this game, sorry, is the control scheme is all about left and right clicking various different things, and I found it a little bit cumbersome, and I kept clicking things and making mistakes. So a little bit of get good from me, because I was watching the developers on a recorded stream and they were having much better battles than I can show you here, but I was suitably intrigued enough to definitely keep this one on my wish list for a future purchase at a later date. Okay, we're moving on to card-based strategy games now. I've got 2 to show you, and the first one is Floppy Nights. This sees you as a girl who invents a machine that you can stick floppy disks into that generates monsters that can then tackle other monsters out in the real world and complete jobs. This sees you go into a turn-based strategy game using cards that you collect as you go along. So a card might be to move, and then depending on which monsters you've put onto the field, each monster has health, attack and speed, which is like how far they can move. Attacks don't cost any energy, but all of the other cards that you have usually do. And you'll start off with, say, 5 energy, and it might be 1 to move, it might be 3 to like level up your monster into like its ultimate next form, or it might be that they've got some special moves that will take 2 or 3 energy as well. It's really well done, excellent turn-based strategy work, and the fact that you have different objectives for different levels, as well as sub-objectives as well, means that there's plenty of replayability. You then unlock cards through winning conditions that give you access to new monsters. You can buy more in shops as well, and yeah, it just has that cute 90s aesthetic, nostalgic feel for me, and I just adored it. It reminded me of what I'd hoped Loot Rascals was going to be and wasn't, because that was too roguelike. This isn't roguelike, this sticks quite happily in turn-based strategy mixed with a little bit of Pokemon-esque fun. What's not to love? One of my best surprises, I think, in this 50 list. The second one of the card strategy games that I wanted to show is Loop Hero. Devolver Digital said that this was going to be Game of the Year last year for this year, and I can see why they're tooting it. It's a game that puts you on an endless loop cycle of a hero just walking around in a circle, but you can change that cycle by playing cards either on the circle and the path that he takes, or by altering things that happen around it. And there's 2 kind of things at play. Every time you go round a loop and you pass your camp, you replenish your health and can kind of keep going and go again. But there's also a day-night cycle that's going on, and every time a day passes, and that's not the same length as a loop, new enemies will spawn. And when you attack those enemies, you don't actually do any of the combat, you watch it kind of unfold. But out of that then comes new equipment for you to pick up and potentially equip to buff up your character, but also new cards to make the loop different and almost always make it harder. You'll want to make it harder because ultimately at the end of each level loop, you're going to go up against a tough as nails boss. And so if you haven't gone around a loop that's hard enough, that's then spawn dropping equipment that will enable you to beat that boss, you're going to lose, and then you're going to go back to camp with only a percentage of all of the resources that you've picked up from all the different card drops that you've done along the way, building up mountains for HP, forests for wood, and so on and so forth. That you can then take back to your camp and kind of build up a better start for yourself next time around. So there's a roguelike going on behind the scenes, but it's all around dropping cards for this loop. It sounds really hands-off and naff, but it is weirdly engrossing. And apologies that I've had to really explain quite a bit here, but you need to understand all of that to get why Loop Hero is a good game. And as it's got a discount for its pre-launch, I shall be grabbing it for it. Onto my kind of miscellaneous section, because I've got a couple of games here for it. The first one is Orbals, and this sees you play as a dinosaur that rolls up into a ball and smashes bricks of different colours. What I found really interesting is when I saved gameplay footage of this game, it saved as Mojo HD, and then it clicked. I have a game on PlayStation 2, and I've got footage of it on this channel, actually, of a game on PlayStation 2 called Mojo, which is an identical concept, and clearly Orbals is doing a love letter to that game. It's not identical because it's completely different theming and different level design, but the gameplay, like the game mechanics of it, are identical and the same. You have to smash through and change colour of your dinosaur by going through different pads of colour to then kind of smash through what you've got of that colour. And the way how the levels are designed is that you'll be flicking back and forth, switching colours and kind of getting round to the end. Last but not least, you'll then smash through the ice blocks, and then you'll be doing that within a time limit to get the best score and then move on. Really Moorish, all about that leaderboard and time trial challenge. Doesn't quite fit into a platformer or a parkour or a puzzler. This really is about arcade time trial dashling. And so yeah, big thumbs up from me, even if it's wearing its influence heavily on its sleeve. The second game in my miscellaneous other collection is Rain on Your Parade, and I love this. You play as a grumpy ass cloud and you just want to rain on everything. And so this becomes like a physics-based puzzler comedy, because it's things like rain on every guest at the wedding. And so you just hover over the top and you press down the button and rain, but then they cause carnage and there'll be like submissions of knock over all the chairs. But you can only do that if you've got all of the characters scattering from the rain. It then gets more complicated where like a dumpster truck is set on fire, and if you don't kind of put that out properly, the fire will spread and then you won't have enough rain to put out the fire. And it does get more tricky over time, but it's such a cool concept, and I've not had this kind of like crazy abstract fun probably since Watam, released from our Katamari friends. It's in that kind of vibe of stupidity and fun and physics-based craziness. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. Yeah, this is going to be a must-buy on release. The third game on my abstract list is Genesis Noir. It's technically a point and click game, but it does it in such a weird and unique way that I feel like it's just as abstract as it is a point and click game. You play as this saxophone player, and it kind of mashes together music, sound, and if you've played the game Gorogoa, where you would kind of pull and move segments of screen around like a comic strip, this works like that, but you're inside like a 2D 80s tech noir painting, like a neon sign, but it's moving like a drawing. It's really difficult to describe, but it will be things like you'll pull and drag a train around so that it gets to its destination, or you'll be pulling and turning a radio dial so that you tune in sound waves for the big bang at the beginning of the start of time, or a jazz song. It's such a weird concoction of things, but it's really engrossing, and because it feels and sounds and plays so uniquely, I can't help but recommend it, because it's one of the most unique experiences that I had in the Steam Games Festival, and one of the more unique point and click adventures that wasn't just pure abstraction that I've had for a while. So yeah, 2 thumbs up from me. We'll be buying. On to point and click adventures properly now, and the first one up is Tiny Room Stories Town Mystery. This game has a specific gimmick where each of the rooms that you go into, normally with point and click games, when they're 2D, you only see one side of it. But with this, you get to spin round 3D rooms. So you may see 2, maybe 3 walls at one time, but if you spin it, you'll get to see the other bits as well. And quite often, pieces of puzzles are scattered around all of the different walls. I really liked the way how the game made an awful lot of use of that visual, but also didn't skimp on the puzzles and the keys and the codes and the passwords, and the fact that it goes across multiple rooms that you'd need to kind of unlock things on. I was also quite seriously impressed at how much of each room was interactive, and so you could pull out all different drawers and cupboards, and no, not everything is going to be worthwhile, but that was the point, is that you could really go rummaging, and if that level of detail keeps up for the rest of the game, then I will be heavily engrossed in what was quite an intriguing everyone's gone missing story as well. So yeah, thumbs up from me across the board. I just hope it's just as interactive and fun for the rest of the game. Next up is Happy Game, and I'm already a huge fan of anything of Amanita Designs. I'm currently in the middle of Creeks at the moment, but this looks like the horror version of Chuchel. And I'm not normally a horror game person, so I've come here slightly unwillingly, based purely on the developer alone. And they've brought their usual creepy but cute and off-kilter brand of graphics and sound design, and they've applied it to a child who seems to be having an utterly horrible nightmare during the night from their crib. There was some problems with the demo and some technical issues that I ran into. Someone had already posted the issue on the forums and they were aware and fixing it. So apologies for the slightly lackluster variety of gameplay footage, but what's here looks like classic Amanita Designs. So I'm here for it. I'm ready to be scared and creeped out, but also in a kind of cutesy way, hopefully at the same time. So yeah, looking forward to it. Somewhat less creepy but still eerie was Growbot. And this was the shortest demo of the 50 that I picked. It's only 2 screens long, but it left an impression, so I still very much included it. And yeah, your little Growbot likes to put things in his brain box, like a pig that can talk, as you do. And it seems like you start growing flowers in there as well, or like gems or something is what it seems to allude to. You don't get to see much of it because the demo is kind of over before it begins, but it really did pull me in with its art style, the way how things are like creepy, eerie, with like mild insanity chaos in the background. And yeah, it just had a vibe that I really digged. So thumbs up for me from Growbot. Wish the demo was slightly longer, but what was here was grand. And the detail in the art, loved it. And talking of beautiful art, so is the 1990s inspired A Space for the Unbound. Seeing the pixel art in the fluid motion of you walking around, love it. Great style. And thank God it's not another 80s game. I'm over the 80s already. A Space for the Unbound almost felt a little bit to me like a point and visual novel because of the amount of text reading that you're doing and walking around that you do in this demo. There is an awful lot of walking and petting of cats that I did, to be fair. But what I really liked about this game is that it's talking about creativity, having confidence in your own creativity and work and art and yourself, alongside having a writer's block. And it's these characters are kind of bringing in stuff from fiction that they're writing, but it's all housed slightly in the real world as well. And I wasn't quite sure what was real and what wasn't. And I hope that that kind of gets delved into more as the story unfolds. But a really solid start. Looking forward to a bit more interactivity in the full game, hopefully. But yeah, one definitely to keep an eye on. Moving on to an RPG element of a game, and we kick off with Companion, which is where you play as a spirit wolf, going around some lush environments and open world spaces on a collectathon, from what I can gather. I didn't quite understand what I was supposed to be doing in the actual story itself, but my god, doesn't it look gorgeous. And it's some of the best like wolf animations of where it kind of walks and like doggy paddles in the water that I've seen to date. The game itself kind of has you do like spirit calls and have flashes back of moments of past, present and future. I couldn't quite see where it was all coming together story-wise or gameplay-wise, but I was just having fun exploring the area, finding the power-up, turning on lanterns, and as I was gaining more power-ups and turning on more lanterns, more spirit animals were kind of joining and populating the world. And that became kind of really relaxing and engrossing for me. So this could be one of those games that's designed to just be a chill out, explore experience. I'm not entirely sure, but that's what I personally took away from it. You do get abilities as you go along, but they're much more around the spiritual and kind of like waypoint sighting goals, as opposed to like being like, no, you can kick someone's head in. So nice and chilled. Really looking forward to seeing how this game develops, and I'll be keeping a strong eye on it because it looks and sounds and plays beautifully. I just want to know what I'm supposed to be doing in it, if that makes sense. This game probably should be in with the puzzle platformers, but it felt like it was that with an RPG overall, and its Sonority. Sonority is a beautiful music-based puzzle game with RPG elements, or an RPG overarching story, I would say. And as you go through the game, you start off with a flute and only say like one note, and that will move blocks like back and forth or something like that. But then say if you've got like a C note and then you get a D note, You'll then be asked to trigger up different sounds with your flute to mechanically move the world around you. And so if you do a C to a D, that will, because you're going up the notes, it will raise something up one step. If you do C to E, it will raise it up 2. If you do E to D, something will drop down 1, and E to C drop down 2. And the more notes that you unlock, the more complex the puzzles become, because it might be that you need to raise one thing up but raise something else down too, and so you'll need to plot out what you're going to play on your flute to do it as you unlock the travels and talk to all of the different characters that are in the game, which have got some temporary voice acting in, but I still found really quite funny, especially the little rock faces when they're going "Urgh." Reminds me, this game, of the film Labyrinth. Has nothing to do with it, but it had We're Helping Hands and the doorknobs. It just reminded me of that. The final game that I've got in my RPG selection is Chicory, A Colourful Tale. And I've had this on my wish list for ages, so I was delighted to play a demo, and it did not disappoint. I'll be picking this one up on release day for sure. Such a good game. You control like your Snoopy clone, dare I say, with your left stick, and it works very much like an old school top-down RPG. But with your right stick, you can control a colour brush, and you unlock different colours and different types of colours. And depending on what you do, you can colour in the world around you that has lost all of its colour after the opening cutscene. And you might need to colour some things in certain colours. You might need to erase colour, and then that will change how the world is around you. And so you've got lots of like platformy puzzle elements where you'll need to paint things in or erase stuff. And then it turns into like full-on Zelda boss battles where you've got to run and avoid something and then use the paintbrush as a weapon. It really surprised me how diverse and interesting the game was going to be, and it's a relatively meaty demo because it takes you up to the first boss and then kind of ends there, and it left me so much wanting for more. I adored the world. I loved the way how you could paint everything up. Endless creativity, fun and cutesiness wrapped up in a poochy bundle. What could you not love? Moving on now to what I'm going to just title building and strategy games, because that covers a multitude of sins. And the first one up is Best Day Ever. Now, this is a strategy game around trying to survive the daily grind. And in the demo, you play as a lady who is working for a cookie company, and she has to basically be the dog's body to make sure that the product is ready and on time, tastes good, is marketed well, and gets all the investors on board, as well as bringing in sales. You can't manage all the workload because it doesn't give you enough money, strength, happiness and office clout to make sure that you can do it all. So something's got to give somewhere. So whether or not you spend time trying to delegate work, or you take the work home but that then ruins your happiness, or you go, sod it, I'm going to go out to the bar with my roommate or go to the cinema to chill myself out. There's a variety of different ways how you can tackle it. And it's whether or not you want to keep on going down the corporate chunder, which I tried to do in my playthrough, to be fair, because I am a goody two-shoes and a bit of a bore with that. Or you could go and ruin the cookie recipe and make it the worst cookies ever, thereby sabotaging the company because they treated you like dirt. Really interesting concepts, some fascinating dilemmas to play out. Some of the writing didn't always kind of make me feel like I knew what decision I was making all the time. and whether or not it's going to be good or helpful for me short or long term. So if that could be kind of addressed slightly to make options a bit more clear, I think this could be a really good strategy game to try out with some of the other like big changing your life games that are out there at the moment. Next up is Potion Craft, and this was intriguing. You basically are working as an alchemist in an alchemist shop. You pluck ingredients from your herb garden, and you can buy other ones from merchants as they come in. And then through mixing and matching, you start to unlock potions on your like potion recipe board map. And as you put in the different ingredients and mash them up, you can see the map kind of being drawn out in front of you. So you can try and guide potions to where you think new ones might be to explore. And so, like the first one is a healing potion and it gives you poison. I ended up finding fire next and sleep. By just mixing and matching different concoctions of ingredients. And then you can save those potions and try and repeat them again later on. You get other things like a pestle and mortar, or you can start adding in water to kind of dilute stuff if you've made something too strong. And then you can sell them off to customers who will pay X amount for a potion, and you can try and haggle. The more you do, you start to level up your skills, and then that lets you get more of a profit margin, or it could be that you can go further out on your potion map as like more of your memory comes back to you. Really fascinating experience. I just hope that we haven't seen all of the good bits here, because that potion map isn't full of potions like what I thought it was when I first went for it. So yeah, super intrigued. Definitely one that I'll be grabbing probably on launch. Another game that I spent a long time in the demo, and longer than I thought I was going to, was 100 Days, which is a winemaking simulator game. The idea of this is that you've inherited a vineyard and you have limited staff and limited capabilities, and you're going to grow your first wine and sell it. And you have to go through all the different steps of preparing the land, farming it out, pressing it, bottling it and selling it through different stages. And you do it through different seasons. Weather can affect what you can and can't do. But the way how things are done is that you have like this grid, and every time you hit a new stage of wine development, you have to drop that kind of abstract job is an abstract shape that you drop into a grid. And so you have to kind of like gridlock, try and like stick all of the different blocks in a way that will work. As you earn more money, you can upgrade your area that you can then stick more into. And the idea is that you then press and learn about the wines and the different berries and grapes that you've got, so that you can then tailor the wine, make it sell for higher value. That then gets you up new places to build on that can get you more wine and different types of wine, so that you can then get more expensive wine and basically make your business prosper. Really good mechanics, quite engrossing, lots to play with, and the process of making wine is really detailed into different stages as you go along, and that's what I found really engrossing. So this went from a that looks curious to a I'm going to buy that. So yeah, thumbs up from me. It's a thumbs down though for Tinytopia. Tinytopia is a city builder that takes place in a kids' play area with their toys. Everything is radius based, so you put down a house and it must have a store within its radius, otherwise the people won't go anywhere for work and they'll say they've not got a job. Same for fire department and for ambulances in hospitals and police as well. Everything has like a very specific radius, and so you rinse and repeat the same things over and over to make sure that everything is covered. The UI I found really primitive and clunky. I didn't like the fact that you couldn't right click or like enter out of anything that you'd clicked beforehand. You had to go and kind of click off it on a certain button afterwards. And because it's toys, the way how the game kind of works is that you dump the toys down and it incentivizes stacking. So if you put a house on top of an apartment block, it becomes a 3-story tower block. But it kind of would fall over, and like I'd have a hospital like on its side or up a tree. I'm sure it was meant to be endearing, but I didn't really enjoy it at all. And that crossed with an ugly UI and really, really base level mechanics that didn't really engage me. I was quite turned off by it by the time I'd finished the first, I think it was 3 levels. There's 4 in the demo, and I didn't even bother with the 4th because I just knew it wasn't for me. So thumbs down for me, unfortunately. If you're looking for a simpler city builder or like a real entry level, this might be something that interests you though. And showing Tinytopia up is Dorfromantic, which does so much with so little and with such style and elegance and class to it. Dorfromantic is a tile-based landscape builder, I guess is probably the way to describe it. You have these hexagonal tiles that you'll drop into space, and then it kind of frees up the ability for you to put tiles on next to something. But you're trying to kind of marry up tiles so that you can form, there'll be like little speech bubbles that come out of tiles, and it will say, I want 8 of a forest together. So you'll try and line up the tiles so that you can get 8 of a forest going round in a line. But you don't want to give it 9 because then that will be an issue. So then what you'll be doing is kind of rounding off that with, say, like desert plains or water, or it might be that you've got rail tracks and you're trying to make a little rail go round. And then what the game implies over time is that as you do more and more, you'll unlock new tiles because you unlock a windmill at the end of the demo, as if like you've leveled up. And I'm really keen and intrigued to see how far that goes, because there's a lot of potential game here that's hiding under a relaxed, go at your own pace and just enjoy yourself mentality, which is great, because you can have both pieces of cake and eat it with Dorfromantic, and that's what really intrigued me. And so, pleasantly surprised. Going to be a day one buy for me, this one. Maybe this says more about me than it does of the actual game, but Zen World, the game that you're looking at now, takes that same joining up of hexagonal grids, but puts it into an explorer mode, a little bit like Civilization games, to be honest, in what's supposed to be a multiplayer experience, but the demo offered sandbox only. So the idea here was that you kept on exploring out and building the land to get to crates of new tiles to keep building. With Zen World, though, you have to match up all sides that connect to something together, and so it would leave me constantly with no actual places that I could use properly, and so my worlds would end up in weird offshoot spikes that wouldn't go near a crate at all, and so I would run out of crates quite quickly. It would also keep offering me loads of sea, which wasn't helpful for my cause. But I just found it kind of unengaging and slightly frustrating. I didn't quite understand how Sandbox related to the multiplayer mode either. It just kind of felt a bit, I don't know, rough. It's a difficult feeling to describe, but when things just don't gel and it feels like the random generation is not on your side ever, I get a bit of a chip on my shoulder with a game, and then I have to kind of walk away and leave it. And that's kind of what happened with me with Zen World. So I'm going to see exactly where this game goes before I decide whether it stays on my wish list or not. So it's on for the time being, but it didn't leave a good impression, I have to say. Festival Tycoon is a game that's been on my radar for a little while, because when we had, I think it was called Big Band on the PlayStation Vita, it was a good concept, terribly executed, and I wanted something to be better, and Festival Tycoon looks like it's going to do that, although its demo shows quite a lot of things that need doing, bugs that need fixing, and some quality of life features, I think, as it's about to hit early access, so there's plenty of time for it to be done. The whole ecosystem of building up a festival works really well, though. You find sponsors that will then want to be promoted everywhere on different billboards. That will take up space, which you'd otherwise want to use for revenue generation, such as shops, coconut shies, photo booths. Punters that are coming into the festival will want tents, they'll want chill out, relax rooms. They'll want toilets and showers that might work and that aren't dirty everywhere. And then the bands themselves will also, when you go to promote them, want a fee, but they'll also want specific requests either around their time on the stage or what else is booked around them, or some of the facilities that you have behind the scenes. I really like the way how all of that was laid out, and I liked the way how you could section off things for VIP guests or for the band themselves, and that was all cool. And you could have their own entrance in and things like that. Very, very cool. What didn't work for me was the constant clicking and dragging to try and capture some of the janitors and the repair mechanics to fix things, because all of my festival goers just drop litter everywhere like the dirtiest people I've ever seen alive. And they were filthy. But the janitors don't clean anything up properly. So my festival was a mess. And so after an hour and a bit of playing, all I had was a pile of junk. So yeah, plenty of stuff that's still to be done with this game, but a good foundation to start with. So definitely on my wish list, and still very much in my I'll buy that when it comes out. In Timberborn, you're playing beavers that have survived the apocalypse, and this is a city builder, but it's very much with nature at the forefront. This game sees you need to take charge and look after all the different resources for the beavers that you're looking after. So they'll need water, they'll need food, they'll need crops, and they'll need a constant cycle of that ongoing. But they'll also need to be constantly eating the trees that are next to them. So resource management to make sure that you don't just eat everything and then you'll have a massive gap of problems to occur is definitely part of the early game here. After a while, you'll start to build up things like having a place where you can start to learn science, and then that brings along the ability to have power, so that you can have a little beaver running around in like a hamster wheel trying to generate power for you. And then you've got roads that can build out and build your influence to therefore build more homes. They'll also need social help and support as well, so campfires and things like that can help, so that they can be happy enough to breed and keep the species going. Because if you're like me, you kept forgetting about that and then they would die out. So yeah, soz beavers, I killed you all. Twice. Really intrigued. I found it strangely adorable and enduring at the same time, because on 7 speed, which you could put this game at, they just all ferret around and it's super cute. So yeah, this one's staying very much on my wish list. I've got a huge backlog personally of these types of builders, and I'm sure this one will join it. Probably much less likely to be in my backlog will be the Cyclist Tactics. This is a sports tactics game all about cycling, where you ride as a group of 4 trying to aim for that victory. It's told over what reminds me of the board game Scotland Yard style of circular points, which try to inform you the type of terrain that you're racing on. And then underneath you've got all the different individual stats of your 4 racers, along with all of the other AI racers that are kind of racing along with you. You need to decide your pace, where you're going to save energy, where you're going to attack. But there's so much information here, it became information overwhelm for me, and I don't think it clicked with me in the tutorial, because the tutorial covers a lot of things that aren't implemented fully in the game, or at least the demo. So I found myself struggling right out of the gate. It didn't get any easier. I played through a couple of races, was woeful in all of them, and I was still at a bit of a loss to kind of grasp the initial mechanics. So what I would say is that if you're into cycling and this all comes naturally, I would imagine that you're going to have a whale of a time, because this is deep, but it is exceptionally niche. And I think other people will kind of admire the fact that it's there and be like, I'm going to go home now. So yeah, the Cyclist Tactics, not for me, but that doesn't mean that it's not a deep and in-depth strategy game. The final strategy game, and the only sequel on this list, is Xenonauts 2. Now, I own the original Xenonauts, but it's in my backlog, and what this demo showed me is I need to sort that out and get on it immediately because, wow, it's a load of fun. Xenonauts 2 sees you go up against aliens in an XCOM-styled turn-based strategy. The way how the game controls did lead me to some accidental uses of energy, because literally turning 45 degrees uses some of your energy. Even if you start to turn, it uses a little bit of it, and I kept forgetting. So yeah, the escape key is your friend in this game, and I need to remember that. But outside of that, and it was only that kind of finicky, like, I keep forgetting and getting it wrong. The game plays like a dream. It's got real brains behind it. It's one mission that you get in this demo, but I've tried it several times, and I've had very different strategy plays and outcomes from whatever the aliens are up to, which gives it that level of replayability that good turn-based strategy games can give you. The level of depth, the way how you can like drop and cover, run around and hide, the field of vision that you get and the cones of vision change rapidly depending on even like a few degrees of how you move your character. It's so cleverly done. Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Insta buy. Xenonauts 2. Saving possibly the weirdest and wonderfulest one till last, the 50th and final game in this show is Alicon, an on-rails photography game where you take photos of weird and wonderful unique monsters in different locations and poses, and then you unlock them to play mini-games and have weird and wonderful side quests in open-world hubs between your on-rails levels. It handles beautifully. The photography mechanics work really well and are very simple, because you don't have to deal with like depth of field or focusing in or anything like that, at least not in the demo anyway. And the way how it's kind of scores you on photos is whether or not it's in the center, and whether it's big on the screen or not. And that's fine with me. You get marks out of 10, and then you collect creativity coins. The more creativity coins you get, you start to unlock new areas with new animals to discover in their new habitats and poses. I found it utterly charming, very engrossing, very Moorish as well, because when I started getting photos that were scoring 6s and 7s, I was like, back out there, we're getting 8s and 9s. I don't know if I'll ever get a perfect 10 photo, but it won't stop me spending a very long time trying. It's not the only photography game that's in the Steam festival. There's 1 or 2 others that I spotted as well, but this was the one that I had on my wish list to begin with, so I wanted to end with that. If you stuck around for all 50 of those games, then A, you're nuts, but B, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. You're hardcore gamers just like me. I will be very quiet for the rest of this week because this was a huge undertaking for me whilst I was still not very well with COVID. So I'll be back next week with the new, more regular reviews. But if you've got any other recommendations, drop them down in the comments, because I'm all for adding stuff to my wish list. And I wish you all a great gaming week ahead. Bye for now.